Donnie, have you recovered from losing that hour for daylight savings time?
Oh, for sure. It took me about a week, but I think I'm acclimated now, and I'm just grateful that we get a long work day. When the sun goes down at 5 o'clock, it only leaves us so many hours to get stuff done. So one day projects stretch into two, and fortunately, we've got a ton on the books right now. So pleased to say, praise report, we've got more roofing and building work than we've had since before the pandemic. So somebody out there is doing something right.
All right, so there's talk about either leaving it with daylight savings time or standard time and making it permanent. If you would pick one of the two, Donnie, which would you pick?
I don't know
Long
any
summer
other way.
nights or get up or have light in the morning?
Hmm. That's a tough one. I'd have to think that through, but I think in my world, the way it is now works for me, but I don't know any other way.
I like the long summer nights. I know some people with younger kids don't like the long summer nights because they said it's hard to get your toddler to go to bed at 8 o'clock when the sun's still out. But that, our kids survived and we did it with three of them. So I like the long summer nights when it gets dark at like 8:45, 9 o'clock.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so I changed Donnie's mind, made him take a stance finally. And welcome to the Carolina Contractor Show. My name's Eric Smith. I do inside sales for Home Builders Supply in Wilson Greenville. Donnie over there, who we just convinced that long summer nights are better, he owns Blanchard Building Company. He owns Sure Top Roofing, and he's a general contractor. And on our show, we like to talk about building usually and things that relate to it. And today's subject we'll get to in a second will relate to building and houses definitely. Plus, we have a special guest that I'll let Donnie introduce. But let me just tell you, it smells good in the studio today because we had to pick up all the socks and empty pizza boxes because he said we got a guest that, you got to have a clean place. So we did that today. All right. So we have a website called thecarolinacontractor.com. That's the best place to go to find more information about the show because you want to listen to a past episode of the show. We've got links to it because we have everything in podcast form. And so you can get the show based on the title or when it was aired or the subject matter, and you can listen to it that way. We also have the YouTube site so you can see us and you'll be able to see our guests. And you can also ask a question you might have about the show or your house or a project or anything by asking the contractor. That's an actual button on the website you can click on and it goes to Donnie. And then he'll answer those questions. And once in a while, we do a show of nothing but questions. And maybe we'll get one of those in the near future. But as we said today, we have a guest. And this dovetails into a couple of previous shows we did, Donnie. We did one on having a banker, people wanting to buy a house. They want to know mortgage rates and how do you get loans and what's it like when you go into the bank to talk about credit checks to get a house. What paperwork do you need? Then the week after that, we did a return on your investment. Usually when you're selling a house, you want to do some things to increase the value of it, but you don't want to do something too custom like, hey, I want a bathroom that's all black. You want to do things that's going to make a buyer go, ooh, I like this house. So we did our previous show on things that were more North Carolina specific return on investment improvements you could do to your house. That show, again, you can listen to. But today, we want to bring it all together, put a big bow on it, and talk to the people who are actually buying a house. And people who are buying a house are going to need somebody that's very important to do that process, and that is a real estate agent. And Donnie, you had the connection, so please introduce our guest.
Yep. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing local real estate extraordinaire, Ashton Dixon. Ashton is a friend of mine, but also I would say my personal realtor because that's very fair. I send folks her way all the time, and I get nothing but rave reviews. And Ashton, I can't thank you enough. I know you have a busy life, but thanks for coming in today and talking to us.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
People buying a house today, Ashton, don't know the first step to take. And we want to also address some of the fears that people have about the possibility of buying a house they think is out of reach. Before people go to find a realtor or buy a house, what do you recommend they do to start that process?
Do the research, education. So, it could start from looking up local realtors, looking at reviews, asking family member or friends, hey, what do you know? Who do you know? Look on social media. That's another huge thing that people do to look for realtors. I would say 100% look up realtors and look at their reviews because we know every realtor is not going to be for everyone. Everybody has their own methods of doing things, and really just finding somebody that clicks with you and has that education that you're going to need to get you where you're going.
Yeah, definitely. I'll second that, Ashton, because realtors are all over the place, and just like you said, not everybody is right for everybody else. That goes both ways. So, I'm sure that you run into homeowners that are very demanding, and some people are just go with the flow, pretty darn
Mhm.
easy. But yeah, do your research, folks, and realtors are I want to say a dime a dozen, but that's not really true because everybody you've got them. I'll just be blunt about it. There are a lot of lazy realtors out there, and if you're really trying to sell or buy, you want a hustler. And I've said that before on the show, but somebody who really gets after it and that's in tune with the market and basically just well connected. I know that you and your husband tied into the community. The boys play every sport in the world, so you're constantly at games, and I think that gives you a big advantage. And I know how well tied in you are, so I think that's super important for folks to do their research and get somebody similar to yourself.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you can't get out there enough, to be honest. But I agree. You really just have to find that person that's going to work with you, for you, and you'll be able to tell. You need to interview a good amount of realtors if you feel like the first one or two is, I don't really know. Because when you know, it's like they say, when you know, you know. So, absolutely.
Well, let's pretend we don't have to pretend that there's potential home buyers out there. We know there's a lot, but it's that first step. They go, okay, we want to upsize or we want to buy a new house or we're going to move. Could you, Aston, start off with a step-by-step process when someone comes to you about buying a house and they say, I'm in the market to buy a house? What's the first thing that happens?
Yep. So the first thing that I always do, and this is obviously just etiquette because things happen. So I always say, first question out of my mouth, are you working or have you spoke to sign any with any other realtor? Because I don't want to be that one stepping on somebody's toes
Hmm.
where they have a client and the client comes to me and then I have them coming to me like, hey, why are you helping my client? So we're going to find out if they are talking to a realtor, and if so, kind of lead them back to that if they are indeed getting help. If not, I'm going to set up an initial buyer consultation. There's a lot of ways you can go about it. You could go about it by saying, okay, do you have a lender in mind and have you gotten pre-qualified? Or you can say, okay, let's set a time where we can meet for coffee. We can do a Zoom, we can do a phone call, whatever is best for you to do a buyer consultation, which is what I would recommend. I wouldn't necessarily throw them to the wolves and the lenders because that stuff can be scary if you don't know what you don't know and you're going into a full blown conversation and you don't even know what due diligence money is. So that's where I come in, setting up that initial buyer consult, which basically goes start to finish every little detail of what the process is, what my specific process is, what makes me different. It's going to go over even my family. I introduce me. I have two little boys that are 7 and 8, my husband, because I want them to know I'm a person too,
Hmm.
so I get it. Life happens, things happen along the way. So I want you to know me as a person. And then, in business, I want you to know me as your realtor as well. So it would start there. And I have a 20-page buyer consultation that they get, that, it's there for them, but we go through that, and that typically takes about 45 minutes depending on how many questions they have. I've had them take 2 hours, and I know some people are like, that's crazy. But long story short, the buyer consultation that's going to set up, it's going to tell you, it's going to show you a contract. It's going to tell you what due diligence is, earnest money, the definitions of all of those. It's going to give you the start to finish. It's going to give you 3 lenders that, I personally work with on a daily basis. If you have somebody, great, go with them. But these are ones that I've worked with. I've did, 12 to 24 deals a year with, haven't had any issues. They're highly recommended. And it just goes into every little, like we could do a session in itself on just the buyer consult and all of the details that you go through and what we're seeing in the market, which changes obviously weekly.
Yeah, that makes me think of a question, Ashton. How many real estate agents don't do that? I mean, in percentage wise, I'm just throwing this out there, and I know there's no set number, but you're probably the only realtor that I've ever heard of doing that. And a couple of folks that I've sent your way said you were just a one-stop shop. They got everything from exposure to the MLS, and I'll get into that in a second. I have another question regarding that, but from that to finding somebody, a lender that actually fits their financial profile, because I know you have multiple lenders, but my question is, how many realtors don't do that? I would say a lot.
Probably a good amount. I can't say a number because I meet with I have a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, I have a good amount of quality agents that I talk to on a weekly basis that are just the best people around. And, they have great reputations and they're all doing consults and but I know there's a ton of agents that I've never spoke to. I don't know who they are. They're showing my listings or they're up against me as far as when I go to present a buyer offer, but they aren't doing half of what I'm doing, which is, it gives me, I shouldn't say this, but it gives me more energy for my buyer because I'm like, yeah, bring your offer because I know that we're bringing it plus 10 other things behind it. Like we're good with that. So I mean, I would have wished to say that 90%, 80 to 90% of agents do what I do. And I know a good amount do, but I probably not even half of them, to be
Yeah.
honest. Everybody does think when you get in real estate, easy, quick money, big dollars. And while when I started really getting into it at COVID, that was the case, but that had a whole different other factor. You had to win those houses up against tons of different offers and people doing crazy things. So that was in itself a whole different ball game.
Right. And I don't know the answer to this, and I actually just thought about this before we got started, so I don't want to surprise you with a loaded question. But the MLS, a lot of people don't even know what that is and that that's a thing. But what is the advantage of having exposure to the MLS versus just an internet search? Because you've got Zillow and some other sites out there, realestate.com or whatever it is, and I know a lot of people just like to search that way before they contact a realtor. But what are some advantages of the MLS?
Major advantage is when you're just searching like Realtor and Zillow, it's going to give you that generic information. It may give you the listing agent, obviously, that you could call and talk to. But if you have a realtor that's within the MLS, it's going to give you documents like the residential property disclosure, which is typically going to tell you a bit about the whole house. It's going to tell you the roof, the HVAC here, depending upon what the sellers know and can fill out. If they don't know it, they're putting no representation or, that they don't know. Otherwise, it's going to give you every bit. I mean, I can't remember how many pages it is because they do update the forms, but it's pages of information on the home. So I think it's a very key part of even before I go show a house to a buyer. I'm looking up that house, I'm getting all that information and I'm sending it to my buyer because if they know they don't want to buy a house that, let's just say a roof that has a 40-year roof, they're not going to want to have to replace it. And I'm seeing an RPD where the house was built in 1980 and there's nothing about a roof and you go to look and it looks pretty bad. They're probably going to rule that one out before even wasting their time to go see it. But it gives you a lot of insider information as far as the home. A lot of times agents will put private agent remarks, which are things that the seller may want to put in there, but not necessarily want to put for all of the public to see. But if you have a realtor, they're going to see that private agent remark, and then they're going to be able to relay that information to you.
We've always said you should take care of the roof on your house. And Donnie owning SureTop Roofing, we talk about like GAF. It's such a no-brainer. You put a new roof on a house, you get warranties up to 50 years. It's transferable. So if you were getting ready to sell your house, and we just use this as an example of ROI, putting a new roof on the house not only makes the house more valuable, the fact that you can say to a potential buyer, oh, by the way, they just put a new roof on 2 years ago and it's under warranty. And if you buy this house, you'll have access to that warranty and you'll be covered extra, so to speak. And it's a good selling point. But that goes to the seller. Ashton, when it comes to the buyer and they find the house, and we know that houses have multiple bids, let's say all the bids are relatively in the same range. How do you make your buyer's bid stand out?
There's a lot of key factors. That's like a loaded question, but I'll give you a prime example of my style going from when we're going to go look at a house to when we're offering, because you got to tie it all in. So if I know we're going to go look at a house, first and foremost, I'm obviously going to schedule it. And then I'm going to reach out directly to the agent. I'm going to introduce myself, say, thank you so much for letting us see the house, compliment. It's a great listing. Congratulations. Everybody likes, to hear that, and people cheer everybody on, it's a good thing. So after that, I'm going to find out from the seller standpoint, because everybody talks about, we want to quick close, we want cash. Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes somebody may be building a home and they need a longer close. So I'm going to reach out. I'm going to say, is there anything specific as far as that the seller is looking for that you want to disclose to let us know? Sometimes they will say, we need a seller possession. It would be great if they could get that and didn't have to pay anything. Or we would love a 28-day close. This is an investment property, or this is a property that they inherited. They're not trying to hang on to it. It's just, so finding that out, that's going to be the most important for me at that point. We go, we look at the house. They love it. I'm then going to leave the house, and I'm going to call the agent again, probably after a day or two of telling them that we're going to go view it and find out that information. So this is going to be like my second touch to that agent. And I'm going to basically verbally give them the feedback that my client loved the house. They could see it being their home. They could see themselves creating memories there. Thank you again for letting us show it. Just going to give you a heads up. We're going to send an offer your way. Wanted to verbally let you know, like, they are overqualified. A lot of times I will recommend going to a lender, talking with the lender. It depends on their finances, because it can get sticky. Like if they're an FHA loan, and this is going into banking world, so I won't get that far into it. But if I know their loan is kind of sticky, sometimes I'll even go to the extent of calling the lender, if it's one that I use regularly, and I've did it multiple times, and say, hey, do you want to ride and see this house with our client? Because the lender knows, not necessarily the appraisal or not the appraiser, sorry. The lender knows the client, and they know what the appraisers are going to be looking at. So if we're going to walk through a house and these people fall in love with it, we want to make sure there's not huge ceiling stains or peeling paint off of the side of the house, because that's one thing, and an FHA won't go for it. It'll have to be repainted and all the things. So anyhow, I got off on that tangent as far as the one thing that I do is, bring the lender sometimes. But I'll reach out, I'll let them know verbally what our offer is, and let them know I'll be following up, with an email. In the email that I do, because I can't tell you how many times on listings I've gotten offers and I've almost jumped over them in my email. And that may sound bad, but it's because they're sent through like our dot loop system. They're not sent via email. That's just like send an agent an offer, and there's no information. It just shows a contract. So it could very well, get tangled in with my own contracts. Or they'll send an email and be like, thanks for letting us see the house. Here's our offer. And there's nothing. So in my email, I'm introducing myself once again. This is the third time, so they're going to know my name and probably be annoyed with who I am, but they're not going to forget me. Introduce my clients, tell their name, tell again they love the house. I'm going to put all of our offer terms, the offer price, the due diligence date, the due diligence amount, the earnest money, the type of loan, any contingencies, anything we're asking. I'm going to put that all in a paragraph. So literally the listing agent can just scan it and see what our offer is without having to scroll through the contract, which they're going to do, but that makes it a whole lot easier. Then I have a paragraph again on why they love the house. I have a paragraph on such and such is working with such and such at such and such's bank. They're pre-qualified. Here's all of her information, so they know the lender that's introduced in that email. And then basically just saying, we really would love the chance to work with you. So that's kind of going above and beyond. It's setting up a presentation of an offer. So even if an offer comes along that outbeats us with a stronger due diligence, but they just send an offer and it's kind of sloppy, another realtor is going to see on the listing side, they're going to be like, this is really put together, and you're kind of just setting the tone of how a transaction will be.
I was going to say, if I were the seller, I would, and I know this isn't for every house because some people don't like their neighbors. I love my neighbors. And if I were the seller and you came to me with that, and I remember, we were doing some of the flip houses, and I remember how those offers came in all over the place, and they may be, a little more due diligence, but this one was a sure thing. And there's a lot that takes place between the offer acceptance and the deal closing. So that's another question. I think most people that are decent people have good neighbor relations, and you care about who buys your house is what I'm trying to say, because that's been your home with your family for however long. So that would make a
Yeah.
difference to me.
And with fair housing, you kind of have to be careful with that. Like, I know some people are for writing letters, and some people are like, no, you can't do that. Well, if I have a client that's like, I want to put a letter with my offer, please, I'll send it to the agent and say, this is totally up to you. I won't read the letter. They just want me to send this along. If you don't want to pass it along, that is totally fine. If you do, pass it along. Just because I'm not going to tell my client no, but I'm also not reading it. So with that being said, that's a sticky situation, but people do those things still, because like you said, people's homes are their personal prized possession. No matter shape, size, what they are, that's their home. So that's the most important to them. So of course they're going to want to pass it along to somebody that really is going
It's
to take
worthy.
care of it.
So, Ashton, I don't want to jump ahead in the questions, but I got a text. Somebody said, I have a question. What are the risks of not using Realtor? You see for sale by owner. What's the risk for a buyer trying to buy a house without a Realtor?
Here we
There's
go.
a lot there's a lot of risk. Now with everything, it's going to be really hard for a buyer to look at a house that doesn't have an agent. With the new law that came out last year, when everything about the commissions came out, you have to have somebody show you that house. Now, if somebody went to a homeowner that had a house and said, hey, we want to see your house, we see you have a sign in your yard for a realtor, those people are more than likely going to contact their realtor and say, hey, such and such wants to see this, and Sally from next door really wants to see it, but like they're not working with a realtor. What do I do? That realtor that's listing the house is probably going to say, shoot me their number, because they have to have a signed document to get in that front door to see the house. Now, they could sign that document and it could only be for a one showing listing. So you're not signing anything that's tying you to an agent for a number of months, but you're still going to have to sign it. And I don't know a ton of realtors that are going to be jumping at the thought of showing somebody a house that does not want to work with a realtor. But in that case, I would be one that would do that, because in my mind, in hindsight, I'm going to think, okay, they don't want a realtor, but do they really know what a realtor is? So if I'm going to get them and I'm going to show them that house for one time, I'm going to make sure that time matters. I'm going to let them know, hey, I can help you. And more than likely, there may be a slim chance that you may have to compensate me a little bit, but more than likely, this seller may work with us to compensate me. So you just get me as an added bonus. And on top of that, like, I'm going to be able to make sure everything's compliant, make sure you're not getting taken advantage of, because these days, a lot of people don't know what their home is worth. So as a buyer, you don't want to be overpaying. It's great to underpay, but if chances are, if you're going to look at a listing that has a realtor and you don't, you're going to be the one falling behind, because when you don't know all of the documents, you don't know what's compliant, you're really just trying to buy a house. And more than likely that listing agent, I don't want to say you is going to take advantage of you, but they know what they're doing. They're working for their client for a reason. And it could be that the listing agent, and I've had it before, where I've had somebody that wants to see, we're going to flip it, that wants to see a for sale by owner home, and I'm representing them as a buyer agent. I will call the for sale by owner and I'll say, hey, I'm a buyer agent and I have a buyer. If I'm able to bring, you a willing and able buyer, would you be willing to pay me a 3% commission if we bring you an offer that around what you want? So it's kind of flipping it a little bit. But also, some agents will say, you give me 4% and I'll handle the paperwork, but then that gets into dual agency. And that's a whole nother topic too.
Hey, I wanted to say this so I don't ask you to say it. I know that there's been a lot of shakeup in the legislation with real estate law and that whole who gets what commission. There's a lot of to be determined in that area, but I always pitched it this way. And I'd say out of everybody I told, 70% of people didn't know that the seller paid the commission. So what you just said is they get you as an ad. If that is in fact the case, they get you as an added bonus. When I turned you on to people, they said, well, my God, I don't know if I can afford a realtor. And I used to say, look, the person selling the house is paying the fee. You're basically getting a free professional to be your liaison through this whole process. And a lot of people just didn't know that. And I'm careful with my wording because I know that's not the case anymore. And that's your world, but it still works that way sometimes, right?
Yeah, it can be a sticky situation, but it's also very situational as far as that goes. You could go into, hey, I'm going to show you this house. Let me have this conversation. And this is a part of my buyer consult of if, per se, the seller is not willing to pay a buyer agent, do you have, and this would be me keying in the lender too, because sometimes the lender has credits that are able to help offset everything. Do you have 2.5 or 3%? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to stand in between somebody being able to get a home, but also I don't want to do it for free either. Just having that conversation with them up front of, hey, can you afford it if this is the case? And then also talking about other situations. We could offer on this house, and we could offer a little above if comps pulled above. We could offer a little more, and we could ask for a seller credit that's going to pay for your closing costs slash commission fees. So there are ways around it, and that's just where you have to get really creative, and you really have to dig down deep with their lender and figure out what they truly could do. But I would say somebody, whether it be a first time home buyer or a home buyer that has not did it in a while, just to reach out, because you never know. You never know. I just helped somebody last year, at the end of last year, just graduated college. He said, I know that I'm not going to be able to buy a home for 2 years. I have to work and have income for 2 years. And, that whole 2 year mark and that was not the case. I got them with a lender. They had a letter from their current employer that they had a contract. We were able to get them under contract to brand new home with closing costs and concessions. And he thought he wasn't going to be able to buy for 2 years, but he would have never known that had he not just reached out and just made that one phone call of, I'm just getting information.
Ashton, my niece went through the same thing. She and her husband, a couple kids, a third on the way. We can't get into a house. We're not in that situation. My wife and I encouraged them, call a realtor. She called a realtor, went to our church, and they're in a house. They were in at the end of the year. It took them like 60 days, and they thought it was impossible. But as you just pointed out, all you need to do is say, hey, who do you guys recommend I call? Ask a realtor. You're going to find out a lot. Now, this is Carolina Contractor Show, and we've been talking with real estate agent Ashton Dixon. I want to do a quick speed round. What this means is I'm going to ask you a couple questions. You got to give me a 30-second answer. You think you can do it?
Probably not. I like to talk, but we'll try. We'll try.
Let's try to do it, because
No
these are
way.
common questions I want to make sure people hear an answer from a pro from. When they come to you and say, how much is my home worth? What are the quick variables there?
Quick variables are give me your address. And that's basically all I need. What's your address? And if you want to get into the nitty gritty, you can tell me how much you owe. So I could tell you when we do figure out your CMA, how much you could net from that. But really just your address. I'm plugging that into the MLS. I'm looking at the houses that are pending, that are on the market, and that have closed and sold. I do ask them specifics as to, have you had any updates, the roof age, all the tiny little specifics that they would need, or hey, what do you want to tell me quickly as far as what you've done to your home? And then I'm going to plug all that in and get it to them. And generally, I'm going to give it to them within 30 minutes to an hour after, and schedule a call and go over it and all of that.
Question number 2, realistically, how long is it going to take to sell my house? I got to go.
Loaded question. That's going to be variable. So when we essentially go to sell your house, are we choosing the method of, we're going to price it low to get people in the door to drive the price up to what you want, or we're going to price it at market value to where we should be getting showings and offers? Or are we going to price it a little higher to see it as far as if that works? Knowing that if we're pricing it a little higher, we got to keep in mind that it's probably going to take us a little longer, and we could have to price reduce it once or twice. If we're pricing it at the correct market value, it should go under contract, depending, because everything is so situational. It could be anywhere from one day to 2 to 3 weeks. If we're pricing it under market value, it should fly. It's easy for me sitting in my seat, which I'm going to go through the same thing here shortly when we go to sell our house. But it's easy to say, if I come in your home, hey, let's price it under market value because we're going to get more traction in the door. But it's my job, as on the listing side, it's my job to get you to net the highest that you can net. And realistically, if I'm coming to sell your home and I'm like, let's list it under market value, that's not going to sound too appealing to you. So I think staying around market value always does the trick. But you do have some people that want the option of pricing it high. But is that going to be a quick sell? Probably not, unless all the stars align.
From your experience, what are 3 things top of your head that a home seller can do to prepare their house for sale?
First and foremost, deep clean. That's going to get rid of any smells, and it's going to make everything just look better. Declutter. A lot of people cannot see past clutter. As an agent in the buying world, I'm able to walk some of my clients through, and I know if they can't see past it, I will talk them through it. Hey, remember, all of this stuff won't be on the counter. You won't have that lime green wall, but declutter is a big thing, a second big thing. But not everybody wants to remove their personal belongings, and those are their prized possessions in their house. So I'm not one to push that too much. Third, I don't know.
Paint?
You could paint, but you don't want to throw your clients into doing stuff on the house, and then it doesn't hold as much value, so it's like, paint your whole house, spend $5,000, but you're not going to make $5,000 back to spend. For me personally, I would say landscape the outside of the house. Make sure that, and the reason I didn't say it is because I lump it in with cleaning, but I guess I shouldn't, because a soft pressure wash and a pressure wash and blowing the driveway and trimming the bushes, those aren't cleaning things to people. So I would definitely say that, to make sure your yard doesn't need to be immaculate, but the outside does need to be inviting. It needs to be clean. It needs to look put together, because nobody's going to want to see the inside of your house if the outside looks like the Addams family,
Right. We've always stressed curb appeal. Pull up to the house and go, oh, I love this house, and I haven't even walked inside of it yet.
Yeah, you're setting the tone for the inside. Definitely.
Very good. Well, Ashton, I appreciate you coming on the show. I'm glad Donnie was able to make the connection, because I think there's a lot of people, as we wanted to stress, that don't think they can buy a house right now, whether it's interest rates, so they seem to be dipping, or they're not in the position to it, or they go, I ain't got no money. And you have lots of ways and information, and just from being a pro at it, to say, actually, I can find a house for you. You can do this. You just can't be afraid to ask a realtor to come in and talk to you and explain your situation. And next thing you know, as I gave the example with my niece, they said, we're not ready for a house for a few years. And 2 months later, they got a house and they got a mortgage payment, and they're absolutely tickled to death by it.
Yeah. And throw in this just really quickly, just because I work with 2 lenders, and there are programs that they have that are paying 100% down, and they are not NC housing. So it's not tying you to the house for 15 years, that if you had to sell it, you had to pay back all the interest. It's literally 100% down, no catch. Sometimes they even get $5,000 closing credit too. So there are a lot of programs out there that are paying 100%. So those first-time home buyers that think we don't even have 3%, you may fall into that category, or you may find that house that falls into that 100% finance. I've literally had a few clients last year that have gotten checks back at the closing table. They've gotten money back.
I told you, Eric, the girl is good. Let me tell you how good she is. She found a really nice house for my ex-wife, and she didn't even have a job. So, it doesn't get any better than that.
That's why it matters who you work with and the lenders that you work with. That is key.
How can people contact you?
They can contact me via email. I can give that information to you. By phone, I have my silencer set on 9:30, but I'm not in bed and asleep until 11 or 12. And chances are I'm on my phone or doing work, because that's my quiet time when my boys are asleep. Text, call, email. I'm on social media. I'm starting to be on social media a lot more, because I'm kind of an old soul when it comes to that. I do a lot behind the scenes, but I don't like to put my whole life on camera, but getting better with that. So
I'll put your information out there. I've got your email, I've got your number, and a link to your website. So I'll put all that on the Carolina Contractor. I have been fortunate enough to build Ashton and her husband's home. So I have watched her go through this whole process she described, and she never turns it off. And Casey, he was giving her a hard time. He said, "Man, she never stops talking about real estate. But if you're looking for a realtor, I think that's what you want."
Yeah, you gotta have the passion. You gotta have the passion. And I'm a boy mom of all sports, like you said. I'm at all sporting events. That work life juggle is there because I'm meeting people 24/7, and they're seeing me with my kids, but me working as well. And I can't tell you, speak volumes of how much business I've gotten from just really true great people from that.
Well, you know what I want to do, Ashton, is in the near future, we'll have you on an episode and we'll take it from the seller's perspective because we did a deep dive into the buyers. So if you want to do that, we'll have our people call your people and we'll schedule a time when you can come on and say, hey, instead of you're buying a house, you're selling a house. Why do you need someone like Ashton on your side to make that sale? So sound like a deal we can do in the future?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And again, we'll have her information up on the website and all the social media, and you can contact her if you're buying or selling a house and you want a pro, someone on your side. She gave great insight. And then in the near future, we'll have her on again to talk to all you people who would like to sell your house and have a pro real estate agent represent you. And we thank you for tuning in to the Carolina Contractor Show.
Thanks, Ashton. Great job.